This is all you have? A child's drawing and a story?
Victoria Hale's voice came out flatter than she intended, but the tremor in her hand betrayed her. She was standing at the edge of her glass desk on the 38th floor, the Seattle skyline drowned in rain behind her. In her fingers, a single sheet of paper shook very slightly, wax crayon on cheap paper, pressed hard enough to leave dents. A simple drawing. A woman with silver hair on a bed. A tall man in a dark tie standing beside her. In his hand, a small silver rectangle, half-colored gray, half white. A USB drive. Across from Victoria, Daniel Brooks didn't move. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his skin a deep, warm brown that caught the office light. His hands clasped together so tight his knuckles had gone pale. Beside him, his 8-year-old daughter Maya gripped his sleeve, her dark curls pulled back in a messy puff, her eyes too big and too awake for a child. Daniel finally spoke, voice low but steady. "Sometimes," he said, "that's all the truth leaves behind." Victoria let out a breath that sounded dangerously close to a scoff. "You broke into my building, Daniel. You walked past security and into my office with this." She lifted the drawing. "If you expect me to overturn everything based on a kid's crayons and your version of events..." Maya flinched. Daniel rested a hand on her shoulder. "I expect you," Daniel said quietly, "to look at what you missed." For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the rain tapping against the glass, running in long, tired streaks down the window. Victoria's gaze dropped once more to the drawing, to the old woman on the bed, to the man at her side, to the silver drive in his hand. Her throat tightened. If this drawing is true, then I fired the wrong man. To understand how Victoria Hale ended up accusing the only innocent man in the room, we have to go back to the day everything went missing. Horizon Atlas Labs rose over downtown Seattle like a block of frozen sky. Glass and steel, all sharp angles and mirrored surfaces, swallowing the rain and the clouds and giving back nothing. Inside, everything was sleek, controlled, exact, just like its CEO. Victoria Hale walked the corridor toward her office with the kind of pace that made people press themselves to the walls. Her heels clicked on polished concrete, her dark hair pulled into a severe knot, her expression giving away nothing. "Board call at 9, launch review at 11, press briefing at 4, Adrian Cole recited, keeping step beside her. The legal team flagged 2 paragraphs in the licensing agreement. "I've read them," Victoria cut in. "We'll keep the language. If they don't like it, they can walk." "Yes, ma'am." Adrian smiled his usual polite, forgettable smile, the smile of a man who made it his job to be invisible until needed. His suit was immaculate, tie neat, hair just slightly too perfect. He carried a tablet hugged to his chest like a shield. They reached her office, a corner space that looked like the command center of a spaceship. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a wall of screens, a single, abstract painting that could have been anything or nothing, and, almost invisible along the side wall, a small, discreet safe. Victoria entered the code, turned the handle, and pulled it open. Inside lay a single silver USB drive on a velvet tray. It caught the light as if it had a pulse of its own. "This again," Adrian said lightly, leaning in the doorway. "You know we could store that on the cloud, password protected, triple encrypted. It's what we sell, after all." And quote. Victoria didn't look up. "The cloud has been hacked," she said. "People have been hacked." She picked up the drive between thumb and forefinger, as if it were something fragile. "This," she murmured, "doesn't leave my hands unless it's with my mother." Adrian tilted his head. "The strategic models and the data set. Sure, but the videos..." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Those are my business," she said. "And my mother's. No one else's. Our..." She slid the USB into the pocket of her blazer, shut the safe, and spun the lock. The metallic clank echoed through the office. "I don't trust systems I didn't build," Victoria added. "And I barely trust people." She moved to her desk. Adrian watched her for half a second longer than he needed to, eyes flicking to where she'd slipped the USB. Then he smiled again. "Understood," he said. "I'll have security send the latest reports to your server." He left. The door sighed shut behind him. Outside, the rain started up again, tapping at the glass like impatient fingers. On the other side of the city, rain leaked through the frame of a third-floor window in a small, tired apartment. The kitchen smelled of garlic and cheap tomato sauce. A single lamp above the table painted everything in a soft, struggling yellow. Daniel Brooks stirred pasta in a pot that had seen better days. The steam fogged his glasses. On the table behind him, Maya sat with her feet swinging off the chair, hunched over a sketchbook. "What are you drawing this time, Starshine?" Daniel asked without turning. "The house," Maya said. "The big one, with all the echo." Daniel smiled. "The Hale house?" "Yeah." She pressed a crayon harder. "And Miss Grace." He turned off the stove, wiped his hands on a dish towel, and leaned over her shoulder. On the page, in bright uneven lines, was a large house on a hill, windows like squares of light. Inside one of them, an older woman with silver hair sat on a bed, a soft blanket drawn up over her knees. Grace Hale, his employer, his patient. Maya had drawn a small rectangle near the bed, hanging from a hook, colored silver and gray. "And that?" Daniel asked, pointing. "That's her shiny thing," Maya said. "The box, she says, has memories. The USB drive," Daniel murmured. "She likes holding it when she talks about you-know-who," Maya added. "The daughter who's always on the phone." Daniel's smile faltered. "You mean Victoria?" Maya nodded, absent-mindedly adding rain outside the window with short blue strokes. "She always looks like she's about to hurry away," Maya said. "Even when she's just standing there." Daniel said nothing. He knew the look. He'd seen it on Victoria's face the first time they met when she'd interviewed him in her office, not to get to know him, but to calculate risk. "You were a nurse," she'd said, scanning his resume. "Why leave a hospital for private care?" "Hours," he'd answered. "My daughter. I need a schedule that lets me be there for her." "You're a single father?" "Yes." Her eyes had flicked up to his face, taking in his dark skin, the worn suit, the calloused hands. He'd recognized the quick flash of bias, almost saw her doing the math. Liability, reliability, image. He'd also seen her pull it back, bury it, turn it into something colder policy. "We run background checks," she'd said. "Financial, legal, social. If there is anything I need to know." "There isn't," he'd replied quietly. "All you need to know is I won't let your mother fall." Now, months later, he had kept that promise. Every day he helped Grace to the window, brewed her tea, reminded her of her pills, listened to stories about a girl who used to bring home science fair trophies and hide sketchbooks under her bed, a girl who now ran an empire and barely had time to sit at her mother's side. Grace would smile sadly and say, "She doesn't know how to be small anymore." Daniel would adjust her blanket and pretend he understood. The Hale house was too big for its own warmth. High ceilings that made voices echo, long corridors that turned footsteps into soft, distant ghosts. Grace's room, though, had become a small island, her favorite armchair by the window, a shelf of old photo albums, the TV usually muted, always tuned to some nature channel, and on the bedside table, most days, the silver USB drive. "Remind me," Grace said one afternoon, turning it over between her fingers. "What did you say this was called?" "A drive," Daniel answered. "Like a little box that holds files, pictures, videos. It is that. Pieces of time," she mused. "Feels too small for that, doesn't it?" Maya looked up from the floor where she was drawing. "Can I hold it?" Grace smiled. "Only for a second, sunshine. It makes my daughter nervous when it's not where she left it." Maya took it carefully. It felt cold and heavier than it looked. She turned it, memorizing the way the light slid along its edges. That night, in her sketchbook, she drew it again and again. A tiny silver rectangle near Grace's hand, like a recurring symbol. Days slipped by in a pattern. Morning. Daniel at Horizon Atlas Labs to drop off updated reports for Grace's treatment, nodding briefly at security as he passed through the glittering lobby that never quite felt like it was meant for people like him. Afternoon. At the Hale House, managing medications, cooking light meals, listening to Grace's stories. Evening. Back at their apartment, Maya doing homework, Daniel checking bills, stretching every dollar until it squeaked. And threaded through all of it, small, almost invisible moments. Adrian Cole lingering just a little too long in Grace's doorway with a file in hand. Adrian's cologne sharp and citrus drifting into the room after he left. The soft beep of the security panel outside the bedroom, blinking yellow, then green. Does he always come in here? Daniel asked Grace once, gently. He says he has papers for me, Grace replied. Consent forms and the like. I don't always remember signing them, but he looks so sure. Maya drew that evening. She drew the silver drive, and a tall man with a neat tie, a small rectangle in his hand. It went missing on a Thursday. Victoria was already on edge. Horizon Atlas was days away from sealing a massive government contract. Analysts were watching. Competitors were circling. Emails came in like hailstones. She opened her safe that morning out of habit, needing the cold, solid reassurance of the silver drive between her fingers. The tray inside was empty. For a split second, her brain didn't accept it. She blinked, checked the corners, patted the felt like maybe the drive had flattened itself out of fear. Nothing. Her chest tightened. Adrian, she snapped. He appeared in the doorway seconds later, tablet in hand, that same forgettable smile immediately fading at the look on her face. The drive, she said. It's gone. Adrian's brow furrowed. Maybe you moved it? To your mother's? I brought it back 2 nights ago, Victoria said. I remember. I unlocked the safe. I put it in myself. Security footage? He suggested. They pulled it up together. A smooth sequence of time-stamped images. Victoria in, Victoria out. Cleaning crew. Adrian. Security doing rounds. Then, at the exact 2-hour window when the safe must have been opened, the footage glitched. Screen full of static. Timestamp skipping forward. No record. How long has that been there? Victoria demanded. Adrian swallowed. It said we had a minor system update. Maybe something. Get security. She cut in. Now. Within an hour, Victoria had a list of everyone who'd been on the floor that day. Most were staff she'd known for years. One name stood out, not because it was new, but because it came with an asterisk. Daniel Brooks, caregiver. Special access granted for delivery of medical documents. Financial instability. Noted. Single father. Noted. Back of mind suspicion. Suddenly, brutally, foregrounded. Call him up, Victoria said. Victoria, Adrian began carefully. Call him up. They met him in the lobby, not in an office, not in private. Here, under the cold gaze of glass and marble and security cameras that, for once, were working perfectly. Daniel stood with his messenger bag over one shoulder, Maya at his side holding a worn-out stuffed rabbit. They had just come from the pharmacy. The plastic bag around Daniel's wrist still held prescription bottles rattling quietly. Miss Hale? He said, confused as she approached with 2 security guards flanking her. Is something wrong with your mother? Victoria didn't bother with pleasantries. The drive I keep in my safe is missing, she said. So is a small amount of cash, and several sensitive documents. You were on my floor the day it disappeared. Daniel's face tightened. I was dropping off your mother's medical reports, he said, like I do every Thursday. Your bag, Victoria said, nodding at his shoulder. Hand it to them. Maya's grip on his sleeve tightened. Dad? It's okay, Daniel murmured, though his eyes had gone darker. He handed over the bag. You're not going to find anything. The guard upended it on the lobby table. Papers, a stethoscope, a half-eaten granola bar, the pharmacy bag, Maya's markers. No USB, no cash, no stolen documents. Check his pockets, Victoria said. Daniel stiffened. You don't have probable cause, he said quietly. This is private property, Victoria shot back. You've been in areas where you weren't supposed to be. His jaw dropped like she'd slapped him. I go where your mother asks me to go, he said. Your office is 100 feet above my pay grade. The guard patted him down anyway. He stood still, humiliation burning through him, aware of every pair of eyes in the lobby pretending not to stare. They found nothing. Maya's eyes shone with tears. Dad didn't do anything, she whispered. Victoria's gaze was ice. Somewhere under it, fear and old betrayal twisted into something ugly. I can't wait for proof to grow legs, she said. Not this close to a contract that could make or break this company. So you're going to make me your proof instead, Daniel said, voice breaking. Because I'm the one who can't fight back? There was a long, thin silence. You're terminated, Victoria said at last. Effective immediately. Security will escort you off the property. You are not to come near my offices or my home again. Victoria, Adrian said softly. Maybe we should. We're done here. She cut him off. Daniel looked at her like he was trying, and failing, to recognize the woman he'd seen sitting at her mother's bedside, just once, when she thought no one was watching. Then he took Maya's hand. Come on, baby, he whispered. They walked toward the doors, past polished stone and glass reflections that showed a black man and his child being watched by everyone, believed by no one. Behind them, the security gate beeped, indifferent. Outside, the rain swallowed them whole. Being fired didn't just mean humiliation. It meant rent due in 2 weeks. It meant the electric bill. It meant Maya's school supplies and inhaler refills. Daniel applied to every caregiving job he could find. Hospitals, private homes, agencies. Some never called back. Some smiled politely and said they'd keep his resume on file. None of them knew why he'd really left his last position, and he didn't have the luxury of telling the truth. In the evenings, after Maya fell asleep, he sat at the small kitchen table, head in his hands, listening to the hum of the fridge and the distant sound of traffic. It would have been easier to let it go, to swallow the injustice and focus on survival. But then his phone rang one night, the caller ID flashing a name he hadn't expected. Grace Hale, he answered immediately. Mrs. Hale? Daniel, came her voice, thin but urgent. Why haven't you been here? Did I upset you? His chest ached. You didn't do anything, he said. I don't work for your daughter anymore. I told her she was making a mistake, Grace whispered. I told her it wasn't you. Daniel closed his eyes. Mrs. Hale, do you remember anything from that night? The night the drive went missing. There was a pause. For a second he thought he'd lost her in the fog that sometimes crept over her memory. Then, I heard footsteps in the hall, she said slowly. Late. Later than you ever stayed. I thought it was you at first, but the steps were too light, and there was that sharp smell, like lemons and something bitter. Cologne. Adrian's cologne. What happened next? Daniel asked. He opened my door. He spoke softly, like he didn't want to wake me. I heard the safe, the little one you showed me. Close. I saw the shine of the silver thing in his hand, just for a second, before he turned the lights down again. Did you see his face? I remember his tie, Grace said, dark, straight, and his voice when he said, just a quick check, ma'am, Miss Hale's orders. It wasn't your voice, Daniel. I'm old, not deaf. He swallowed. Did you tell Victoria? I tried, Grace said, but she came in with all that storm on her face, talking about missing files and betrayal, and I lost my words. Away. They talked a little longer, until Grace grew tired. After he hung up, Daniel sat alone in the dim kitchen, her words echoing. It wasn't your voice. He had the drive in his hand. I'm old, not deaf, Dad. He looked up. Maya stood in the doorway in her pajamas, holding her sketchbook to her chest. Can't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. I had a bad dream, she said. About that lobby, about the lady yelling. He held out a hand, and she climbed into his lap, sketchbook and all. After a moment, she opened it. "Look," she whispered. "I drew it. That night. I didn't show you 'cause you were sad." On the page, in streaks of color lit by the kitchen lamp, was Grace's bedroom. The bed, the window with rain outside, and by the bed, drawn in careful, shaky lines, a tall man with a neat tie. In his hand, a small silver rectangle. Daniel's pulse hammered. "Who's this, Maya?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. "That's the man who came in after we left," she said. "The one with the lemon smell. I woke up 'cause the door made a noise and I saw him from the hallway. Why didn't you tell me? I thought he worked there," she whispered. "Like you." And then, everything happened so fast. Daniel stared at the drawing, at the tie, at the rectangle in the man's hand, at the truth his daughter had captured without knowing what it was. He could hear Victoria's words in his head. "You're terminated. You are not to come near my offices or my home again." He looked down at Maya, at the smudge of crayon on her wrist, at the worry in her eyes. "Dad," she asked, "what are you going to do?" He tightened his arms around her. "I'm going to make them look at what they don't want to see," he said. Back in the glass-walled office on the 38th floor, the present and the past collided. "This is all you have? A child's drawing and a story?" Victoria's words were cutting, but not as sharp as her fear. If Daniel was right, she'd fired an innocent man. If he was wrong, she was wasting time while someone out there held her company's most valuable asset. Daniel stepped forward just enough to lay Maya's drawing on the desk, beside a second sheet of paper, his own handwritten summary of Grace's phone call, every detail he'd squeezed from her fading memory. "That's Adrian," he said simply, pointing to the man in the drawing. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "You're naming my assistant in an accusation this serious based on a child's sketch. He has been with me for 8 years. You worked for us for 10 months. Maya's chin lifted. "I know what I saw," she said, voice small but clear. "This isn't a courtroom," Victoria said, barely glancing at her. "This is my company. I don't have to entertain." "Entertain?" Daniel cut in. "You humiliated me in your lobby with no proof. You had a guard's hands in my pockets in front of my daughter. The least you can do now is look at the proof you never bothered to look for." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Anger sat behind it like a quiet, coiled thing. For a moment, their eyes locked. A CEO used to control, a father with nothing left to lose. Something in Victoria's chest shifted. It felt like standing on glass and realizing there were cracks you hadn't heard forming. She stabbed a button on her desk phone. "Get Ite in here," she said, "and security. Now. And bring Adrian." Minutes later, the room held too many people. Adrian stood near the window, tablet in hand, looking confused but composed. A security supervisor hovered by the door. An IT specialist rolled in a cart with a laptop, flustered. "Reopen the footage from the night the drive disappeared," Victoria ordered. "And I want you to check the physical access logs, door scans, badge swipes, everything." Adrian cleared his throat. "Victoria, if this is about the missing drive, we already looked. We looked at a corrupted file," she snapped. "Maybe we were a little too quick to accept that answer." The IT specialist swallowed. "Miss Hale, the system update." "Spare me the jargon," she said. "Can you reconstruct anything from the static or not?" I can try, ma'am." He set to work, fingers flying over the keyboard. Lines of code scrolled by. Timestamps flickered. The static footage of the hallway outside Victoria's office appeared. All snow and gray. He ran a filter. The static shuddered, reorganized, smoothed. A blurry figure emerged. The angle was bad, the lighting low, but the outline was distinct. Not Daniel's broad, familiar shape. This man was slimmer, dressed in a suit, his posture a little too precise. He pressed a badge to the reader. The door light blinked green. "Freeze it," Victoria said. The image paused. "Can you enhance this area?" she asked, pointing at the figure's chest. The badge. The tech zoomed in. Pixels blurred, then resolved into shaky clarity. Id, Cole, Adrian. Access granted. The room went very quiet. Victoria's mouth went dry. Check the logs, she said. The tech pulled up a table of entries. Timestamps, names, doors accessed. There, Daniel said, stepping closer. That line. Time, 23:17. Door, executive office. Level 38 corridor. User, Adrian Cole. Why were you on my floor at 11:17 that night? Victoria asked, turning slowly toward Adrian. He chuckled. It sounded wrong. I wasn't, he said. The system must be glitching again. You heard it. The camera glitched, Daniel said. The logs didn't. They don't know how to lie. Victoria picked up Maya's drawing again, holding it between two fingers. You told me the only copy of the drive's contents was in my safe, she said to Adrian. You told me we were secure. Oh, we were, he insisted. We are. If something got out, it wasn't through me. Her face hardened. Legal informed me this morning that a competitor submitted a proposal using a model suspiciously close to ours, she said. Tell me again how secure we were. Adrian's polite mask slipped, just a fraction. That doesn't prove anything, he said. Maybe you were careless. Maybe you left the drive with your caregiver here and we searched him. Victoria cut him off. We tore apart his bag in the middle of my lobby like he was a criminal. We found nothing. She took a step toward Adrian, the drawing between them like a piece of evidence. My mother remembers your cologne, she said. She remembers your voice in her room. She remembers the shine of silver in your hand. Adrian's jaw tightened. She's old, he said. She gets confused. You know that. And kids imagine things, Victoria added softly, eyes drifting to Maya. Isn't that what you were thinking? Adrian said nothing. Victoria looked at Maya again. Really looked, for the first time. The girl's dark eyes were steady, afraid but unflinching. Her small hand was wrapped around her father's. That tie, Maya whispered. I drew it like that because it was straight. No stripes, just straight. Everyone looked at Adrian's tie. Plain, dark, straight. The security supervisor shifted. Mr. Cole, he said carefully. I'm going to have to ask for your badge. Adrian snapped. You're going to believe them over me? He barked. Over 8 years of loyalty. Over a man who walked in here with a kid and a bunch of crayons. He turned to Victoria. You think they're the ones you should be protecting? He demanded. You're paranoid, Victoria. You always were. I kept this company running while you pushed everyone away. And this is how you repay me? Victoria's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. The ice cracked, just enough to show fire underneath. I pushed away the wrong person, she said. I protected the wrong one. That ends now. She nodded to security. They stepped forward. Adrian backed up. But there was nowhere to go. Glass on one side, wall on the other. The rain-dark city beyond, looking in. This isn't over, he hissed as they took his arms. You'll regret this. 18. I already regret a lot of things, Victoria said. Starting with the day I let you into my office. They let him out. The door shut behind them with a soft, final click. The room seemed bigger without him, colder, quieter. Victoria stood there for a long moment, staring at the space where he'd been. Then she looked at Daniel. He looked tired, not just from the last hours, but from months, years, of having to prove he was not what people assumed when they saw his face, his skin, his bank account. I accused you, she said slowly, in front of everyone. I made everyone look at you like you were dangerous. I made your daughter watch. Daniel's throat worked. Yes, he said. She swallowed. The word sorry lodged in her chest like a stone. She had spent so long being strong, unforgiving, untouchable, that the shape of apology felt foreign. Behind Daniel, Maya shifted her weight. My dad didn't steal anything, she said quietly. He just wanted us to be okay. Victoria looked at her. Then, at the drawing still trembling in her hand, pieces of time, Grace had once called what that drive contained. This, too, was a piece of time, and what she did next would live in it forever. It wasn't fixed in a day. Adrian was arrested. The investigation confirmed what the logs and the drawing had suggested. He'd been copying proprietary data for months, slowly feeding it to competitors for a price that, to him, had seemed worth burning everything for. The board went into damage control mode. Lawyers circled. Press releases were drafted and redrafted. Through it all, one small, stubborn thought kept nagging at Victoria. I did this to the wrong man. I hurt the wrong family. 2 weeks later, the rain hadn't stopped, but the air had grown colder, carrying the first hint of winter. Victoria stood outside a narrow brick apartment building, feeling strangely exposed without glass walls around her. She held a canvas tote in one hand. Inside, wrapped carefully in a protective case, the silver USB drive sat on top of several folders. She climbed the stairs, heart beating too fast for someone who negotiated billion-dollar deals. At the door of 3B, she hesitated. Then she knocked. It opened a crack. Maya peeked through, eyes widening. "Oh," she breathed. "It's you, Maya," Daniel's voice called from deeper inside. "Who is it?" Maya opened the door a little wider. "It's Miss, the lady from the tall building," she said. Victoria almost laughed. Almost. Daniel appeared behind her, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Miss Hale," he said, stunned. "What are you doing here?" Victoria straightened, clutching the tote a little tighter. "I should have called," she said. "But I thought if I gave you time to say no, you might actually say it." He blinked. "Say no to what?" She took a breath. "To this," she said. Inside the apartment, the living room was small but warm. A couch with a faded blanket. A shelf of mismatched books. Crayons scattered across the coffee table. A sketchbook open to a half-finished drawing of the city under rain. She set the tote on the table and took out the case with the USB drive. "We recovered it," she said. "Most of the data is intact. The models, the project files, and the videos." Daniel watched her, expression unreadable. "I wanted to bring it to my mother myself," she went on. "But I also wanted to bring it here first." "Why?" Maya asked, coming closer. Victoria looked at her, then at Daniel. "Because I took something from you," she said. "Not just your job, your name, your safety. I can't undo what I did in that lobby, but I can decide how the next part of this story goes." She reached into the tote again and pulled out a thin stack of documents, held together with a clip. "This is a proposal," she said, placing it on the table. "A new foundation, funded by Horizon Atlas, run independently, focused on supporting single-parent households in healthcare and caregiving work, training, scholarships, legal assistance, things She faltered, then forced herself to finish. "Things I should have thought about before I tore a father and a daughter apart in the middle of my building." Daniel stared at the papers. "You want me to?" "Run it," Victoria said. "Design it, lead it. We can provide the infrastructure, the accountants, the lawyers, but it has to have a heart, and that's not something I can build alone." Silence stretched. "You don't owe me this," Daniel said at last. "Yes," Victoria replied. "I do." Maya tugged at her father's sleeve. "Dad," she whispered, "it sounds like making a place where people like us don't have to be scared all the time." Daniel looked down at her, then up at Victoria. "What about your mother?" he asked. "She'll need someone consistent, someone she trusts." Victoria's mouth softened. "She's been asking about you," she admitted. "A lot. She told me she doesn't like the new nurse. Says he doesn't know how to make her tea right." Daniel couldn't help it. He smiled. "She's very particular about her tea," he said. "So," Victoria said, "here's what I'm asking. If you can ever bring yourself to say yes, come back. Not just as my mother's caregiver, as the director of the Hale Foundation, with full authority to tell me when I'm getting it wrong. That last part seems dangerous, he said dryly. Consider it insurance, she replied. The room felt different then. Less like a confrontation, more like a fragile bridge being built between two cliffs. Maya climbed onto the couch and grabbed her sketchbook. Can I draw it? She asked. Draw what? Victoria asked. Us, Maya said. All of us. Not sad. Victoria hesitated. Then she moved to sit, awkwardly, on the edge of the couch. Daniel sat across from her. The coffee table between them held the USB drive, the foundation proposal, and a box of crayons. Maya flipped to a clean page. Her small hand moved with certainty now. She drew a woman with dark hair, no longer just a hard line for a mouth, but a softer curve. A man with kind eyes and strong shoulders, a little girl between them, holding both their hands, an older woman in a chair, smiling, a blanket over her knees. On the table beside them, a tiny silver rectangle, no longer looming, just there, silent, harmless. Outside, the Seattle rain slipped down the windows of apartment 3B, the same way it always had. Inside, the light over the table glowed warm against the early darkness. Later that week, in Grace's room, the USB drive lay on the bedside table again. Her hands rested on it lightly as she watched Daniel adjust her pillows and listened to Victoria haltingly explain what had happened. You were wrong, Grace told her daughter gently, when the story ended. But you didn't stay that way. That matters. Victoria took her mother's hand. I don't know how to fix all of it, she admitted. I only know how to start. Grace glanced at Daniel, then at Maya, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing all of them again from a different angle. I think, Grace said softly, you just have. Outside the window, the winter clouds hung low, but there was a thin, stubborn streak of brightness on the horizon. Not much, just enough to promise that the sun hadn't forgotten the city. That winter in Seattle didn't stop the rain, but for the first time in a long time, Victoria learned how to let someone stay instead of pushing them away. If this story touched something small inside you, a memory of being misunderstood or of hurting someone because you were afraid, feel free to leave a quiet message for Victoria or Daniel in the comments. Sometimes, the gentlest words from strangers are exactly what someone needs to hear.